Imagine you're sitting outside right now. No phone, no roof, no store down the road, and it starts raining. Not just a drizzle, a full, heavy, relentless downpour. And it doesn't stop. Not after an hour, not after a day. 3 days straight of cold, wet, gray sky. What do? Most of us would panic. But ancient humans? They didn't. And the reason why reveals something surprising, maybe even a little humbling, about just how capable our ancestors really were. Here's the first thing most people get wrong about ancient humans. We picture them as reactive, stumbling through life, constantly surprised by the world around them. But that's backwards. Ancient humans were arguably the most observant people who ever lived. Their survival literally depended on reading the environment, and rain was one of the most important signals they tracked. Before a long rain came, they would have noticed the signs. Animals behave differently before a storm. Birds fly lower, insects disappear. The air smells different. That earthy scent we now call petrichor is actually caused by a chemical called geosmin released from the soil. And ancient humans would have associated that smell with incoming rain long before science gave it a name. They also watched cloud formations, wind direction, and changes in temperature. This wasn't mystical. It was accumulated knowledge passed down through generations, the same way a farmer today knows their local weather patterns. So when the rain came, they were rarely surprised. They had already prepared. The obvious question is, where did they actually shelter? The answer depended on where they lived and what era we're talking about. Early humans, going back hundreds of thousands of years, relied heavily on natural formations. Caves and rock overhangs were the most valuable real estate in the ancient world. And groups didn't just stumble into them randomly. They knew where every cave and overhang was within their territory. These were mapped in their memory, passed down, returned to season after season. But not everyone had caves nearby. In open grasslands or forests, ancient humans built temporary shelters. We've found archaeological evidence of simple structures, branches bent and tied together, animal hides stretched over frames, bark used as roofing material. One of the oldest known man-made shelters was found in Japan, dating back roughly 500,000 years. It wasn't elaborate, but it worked. And that's the point. Ancient humans were not waiting for the rain to stop, huddled under a single leaf. They engineered solutions. And critically, they chose their camp locations strategically. Near elevated ground to avoid flooding. Near trees that provided natural canopy. Near rock formations that blocked wind. Every campsite was a calculated decision, not a random stop. Now here's where it gets fascinating. Once they were sheltered, what did they actually do with the time? Think of it this way. Rainy days were essentially forced rest days, and ancient humans used them productively. Tool making was one of the primary activities. Flint knapping, the process of shaping stone into tools by striking it precisely, required focus and fine motor control. It wasn't something you rushed through while also scanning the horizon for predators. A rainy day, sheltered and relatively safe, was the perfect workshop environment. Archaeological sites frequently show concentrations of stone flakes and tool debris clustered in what were likely shelter areas. Rope and cordage making was another. Ancient humans twisted plant fibers, animal sinew, and bark strips into rope, essential for building, hunting, and carrying. This is detailed, patient work. Rain gave them the time for it. Food processing happened too. Meat that had been hunted before the rain could be further dried, smoked if they had fire, or processed by cracking bones open for the nutrient-rich marrow inside. Plant foods gathered earlier could be sorted and prepared. But it wasn't all work. Social bonding was a huge part of it. Humans are profoundly social animals, and always have been. Grooming. Yes, physically grooming each other, much like chimps and gorillas still do, was a primary bonding behavior. Storytelling around fire almost certainly happened. Singing and rhythm making, possibly as early as 300,000 years ago, based on the discovery of ancient flutes and percussion instruments. And children would have been learning. Rainy days were teaching days. Adults showing younger members how to make tools, how to process food, how to read the environment. If you had to name the single most important thing during a multi-day rain, it was fire. Fire meant warmth. It meant the ability to cook and preserve food. It meant light and safety from predators who were less likely to approach a flame. And it meant a social focal point, something for the group to gather around. But keeping fire alive in wet conditions is genuinely difficult. And ancient humans knew this. They would have maintained fire inside their shelters, using dry wood stored before the rain. They would have built fires in elevated spots to avoid them being drowned out by rising water. And they would have shared fire responsibility. One person's job was to keep it going. Some researchers believe that the ability to maintain fire in difficult conditions was one of the key dividing lines between groups that survived harsh periods and those that didn't. Fire wasn't just comfort, it was a survival technology, and keeping it alive during a storm was a skilled, serious task. Here's the thing that reframes everything. For ancient humans, rain wasn't just an inconvenience to be survived. It was often deeply welcome. Rain filled water holes and rivers, reducing the need to travel far for water. It softened the ground, making it easier to dig for roots and tubers. It brought out certain animals and insects that were valuable food sources. And it signaled to ancient humans that certain plants were about to bloom or fruit, a green light that abundance was coming. There's even evidence that some ancient cultures held rain in almost sacred regard, not because they were being superstitious, but because they had a precise, earned understanding of what rain meant for their survival. So while we imagine ancient humans huddled in misery, waiting for the sun to return, the reality may have been something else entirely. A group, sheltered together around a fire, working on tools, telling stories, resting, with the quiet knowledge that when the rain stopped, the land would be richer for it. We tend to look back at ancient humans and feel a kind of superiority. We have technology, we have medicine, we have weather apps. But ancient humans had something we've largely lost: a deep, intimate knowledge of the natural world. They read the sky, the soil, the animals, the air. They prepared, they adapted, and they did it without a single notification on their phone. The next time it rains for a few days and you find yourself frustrated, maybe think about what your ancestors were doing in that same situation. Probably something more productive than scrolling. If you found this interesting, make sure you subscribe. We cover topics just like this every week. And drop a comment below. What do you think ancient humans feared most? I'll cover the most popular answer in the next video.